parts of Shakespeare resonate with you in the current day? And then on the other side of that, are there parts of Shakespeare that really don't? Or does any part of Shakespeare resonate with you?
It does, because I think for me, Shakespeare is always about the community's judgment. That's what the works are. You know, it's about a group of people, usually a collective group of people, arguing against another collective group of people about a situation or a circumstance like you do every day in life. So to me, as you begin to study Shakespeare, it's not very different than what we do every day. We just don't do it in the same language pattern. But then I found Shakespeare, to me, wasn't as difficult as people tried to make it, because it's just rhythm. It's a series of rhythms. And once you learn the rhythms, you go, wow, okay, this makes sense. And when you actually just say the words and not try to get involved in making it sound a certain way, just say the text. And I think sometimes where people go astray with Shakespeare is they think it should, and eyes, and they go through this whole thing. And I'm like, I don't understand that. And I was going to go and just say it. And I think that it becomes easier for the palate. It becomes easier for the ear. And so many plays that I do, even if they're not Shakespeare, still have that Shakespearean sound to me. So whenever I'm doing anything and people say, well, I don't understand that, or I didn't catch that language, or I said, it's just like Shakespeare. You have to bend your ear to it. And so I don't find, I think it took me a while to figure out that I understood it, and it was easier than I thought it was going to be. It's a difficult thing to study, but it was easier than I put the pressure on myself to believe it would be.
I see.
And I think sometimes you can cancel yourself out before you've even given yourself the option to try, because you say, oh, God, it's Shakespeare, it's going to be hard. And when you say that, then you're not open to the process. And then when you start learning it, you go, is that it? And they go, yeah, that's it. And you go, what was I freaking out about? You just have to read it. And to me, Shakespeare is something that every time you read it, it becomes easier. It just becomes easier. And if you just read it and not try to put something on it or change it, the language becomes clearer and clearer. And then you've got so many guides to figure out, what does that mean? And how does that fit? And when you make sense of it, then you go, oh, well, gosh, he said, I'm going across the street to go to the store. And it might have been in a different phrasing, but it's still the same thing. And so it makes sense to me. And I think that's where, when I started out, I got tripped up, is because for some reason people kept telling me I couldn't do it. So I kind of tricked myself out to believe I can't do it. But then I said, but I can do it. And it wasn't as hard as everybody kept telling me. So what is the big deal? About saying I wouldn't be able to do this? And I'm trying to figure out what it is that you said I couldn't do. And then I had to let go of that, as we all do, and know that I can do anything I want to do. You know, I just have to bend my ear. You know, you just have to do it. You just stop second guessing yourself. And I especially tell African-American students that all the time, stop buying into this myth that you can't do the classics. Stop buying into the myth. It's just a myth. It's not true.
Wow, that's so amazing to hear that you were able to sustain your engagement in Shakespeare and really come to the other side as a distinguished actress. I'm so inspired by that, truly.
So I always tell people that don't let that, but then don't dismiss it and not study it just like you would August Wilson or anything. You know what I mean? Don't be dismissive in it, but don't let it freak you out either. And then ask for help. There's so many people that can coach you. Don't be afraid to get coached, so that the things you don't understand, and I still coach on Shakespeare. If I have to do something, I know about 3 coaches that are really great because they've done them all. Wow. And I would much more prefer to coach with somebody for the intention of a character and to make sure that, you know what I mean? Like I would anything. And I think that's where people go, can go astray. They get nervous and it's like, oh, well, I shouldn't be asking for help. I should know this. You don't have to know everything. And you don't have to know every Shakespeare piece. And you don't have to know every character in Shakespeare. It's okay.
Right.
Just don't have to.
Okay, I'm just thinking of this question right now on the fly. So you mentioned kind of a pressure to know every Shakespeare piece and to be, I guess my question is, do you feel like academic Shakespeare spaces, or this idea of like the academy and the institutionalization, I suppose, of Shakespeare, do you feel that that is a place in which you belong? I mean, at this point in time as a distinguished Shakespeare actress, or is that still a place that you feel is somewhat exclusive?
It's exclusive. I mean, it's exclusive. And I think it's exclusive because people want it to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like their special club. And that's fine. I tell people that that's fine. But I think what knocks them down is when you can take your Shakespearean experiences and transfer it to other things. And then come out on the other side and they'll go, oh, that was just like Shakespeare. And I went, you can apply those things to it,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what good actors do when you learn the rhythm of any writer, and you know what I mean? And we're taught that by Shakespeare's example.
Yeah.
Of his characters and his rhythms and how he reintroduces characters in other plays that you know what I'm saying? It becomes a community of folks that we hear about in all of his plays. And I think sometimes that's the part that we miss. When we're on the outside of that elite, that elite group of folks that feel like they're experts at what they do. And that's great. They can have that. Right. But the great thing about being an expert at that, what else can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we now apply that to something else? Oh, no. Well, okay. And, and in today's society where the average person doesn't even hear Shakespeare, doesn't have the patience to sit for 2-3 hours to hear a Shakespearean piece. We're like 90 minutes, I'm out. You can use some of that experience from Shakespeare and you can apply it to other things. It's why Shakespeare hip hop is such a big deal, and all of those mediums now are taking Shakespeare. It's why so many theaters taking Shakespeare and shaking it up like we did with Taming of the Shrew. It entices audiences to come back and understand that you really can understand this, and it really is a part of our culture. And we don't have to be dismissive and feel like we can't be a part of it, and especially as Black folk. So many times we hear Shakespeare and we go, oh no, I can't sit. I mean, I have family like that. They're like, I just can't come see you do Shakespeare.
Oh no.
And you're like, oh, come on, give it a try. And they go, okay. But then again, I tell them, read a little bit about it like you would anything before you go, and it'll help you. So I think it is an elitist thing for some people. It makes them feel that way, but it isn't. That was not Shakespeare's intention. Let me say that. He was a real average guy. And I think so many people try to make him something that he wasn't.
Right. Kind of deify him.
Right. But he wasn't that. People have put that on him because if you just look at any of his, it's all about the simple things in life. Friends, family, love, lost, gained. Horrible family situations where mothers are crazy and sons are, hey, it's life. And he put it in these words, and we're always judging one another. The community judging who's on top. It's that whole thing. It's life.
Yeah.
It told in a different way, but framed the same way. It's still life, hierarchy, all of that. Yeah. And so he wasn't as complicated as people want to make him.
Yeah.
He just knew how to turn a phrase, as we say.
Yeah.
And so I think those elitists that do that, they think, well, no one could ever do this. I don't think that's what his intention was. His intention was for everyone to be able to come together and experience these things as a community.
Right, right.
That was his intention.
That's so true. Yes. So then, speaking of Shakespeare adaptations that kind of bring him into 2021, into the 21st century,
yes.
You were in a production of Taming of the Shrew at Chicago Shakespeare Theater. It was an all-woman cast, I believe. And yes. In that play, each cast member also played a suffragette. And so I think the idea of the play was that it was kind of a metafictional presentation of the Shakespeare in which the suffragettes were putting on Taming of the Shrew. So my first question about that is, how did that framing and how did the adaptation of that play change the experience of Taming of the Shrew for you, which I think to many people is construed as a very sexist kind of play?
I think we had the ability as actors, especially female actors. One of the biggest things that we had to realize was that when we would transfer from the females to do Taming of the Shrew, we had to, in the right way, encapsulize being a male figure as a woman, right. And right. Not a woman trying to do a woman trying to do a man. We literally focused on that. So it's the different postures of how a man would sit, how a man would do this, because we're mocked so much as women. Men do it us, but to take a piece that's so male heavy and sexist and have women do it and do it in the same mannerisms, knowing how to sit like Baptiste, that male thing, you know what I'm saying? That was interesting to go because we would be, we're girls and we're in these dresses and we're long and we're women of a certain means. So we're not like, so we're women of certain means that have lots of things in our hand. And then all of a sudden, but we're coming together in this women's club to present this play that's very important to us. And myself representing an actual woman of that period as a Black woman in the 1920s, who actually was a suffragette that was fighting to get white women the right to vote, but she couldn't vote. Mm-hmm. So there was a juxtaposition of her being this artist that wanted to be a part of this play because she loved Shakespeare, but yet and still, and people sometimes didn't get that. When we were in the rehearsal hall, they would say to me, well, you're just like us. I said, no, because I couldn't have the vote. Y'all got to remember, I'm here and I'm a doctor. Mm-hmm. And I'm a married woman. And I've raised my children, because this is a woman that married, raised her children. And after she raised her children, she became a doctor and became a part of this club, exclusive club in Chicago, that she couldn't, was one of the few places she could walk in the front door because she was with these white women. But yet and still, she couldn't vote for something she was fighting to help women gain, with the hope that someday, as a Black woman, she would be able to have the right to vote, i.e. Baptiste now.
Yeah.
Who is a man that has these two beautiful daughters and he wants the world for them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the challenge of deciding what to do about that and making sure that, the one daughter has the security, all of that was a lot to kind of put together. But I think that when we went about it, we really tried to be the male figures and not comment on women playing men, but actually just being the men, so that we could see it through a different lens.
Yeah.
Because it would be easy to try to comment on it, but we couldn't comment on it.
Yeah.
So I had to really be a father that wanted to protect his daughters, opposed to a coddling mom that wanted to stroke them, and make good business decisions for my family.
Right.
Which is unique for a woman to be playing something where you got to get out of your way and not bring that to the table when you come. So it was definitely a challenge. it was definitely a challenge for all of us. Because we realize as you go through the text, wow, this is really sexist. This is like,
yeah.
But it is what it is. And we can't change it because that was the intention of the piece.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing a kind of irony here, where in embodying the role of Batista and all of you embodying the roles of these male characters, it's kind of like a flip of what was historically done in Shakespeare's time, in which male actors would embody the female roles. I'm wondering, do you feel that there's any special kind of political power in that switch, in that reversal?
I think there is. I think I got a clearer understanding of how we as women allow men to change us. I didn't realize that until I said, wow, we spend a lot of time allowing men to treat us a certain way, and we teach them that way. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be that way, because at the end of the day, we pick up so much trash. We are always correcting the ills of some man as women in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And the irony of that was watching that and not being able to defend it or fix it. I just had to do it as Baptiste.
Yeah.
Baptiste he's a squirrely kind of guy. Some of the stuff he puts his daughters in, I'm like, I would never. You are but you know what? It taught me a lot about that. You know what I'm saying?
I see. Yeah.
Because I couldn't comment on it and actually do it justice. If that makes sense to you. So you talk about irony was everywhere. It was everywhere all day. Mm-hmm. And I think that the lovely part is when we would go back to our female characters within the play, we always found ourselves struggling to fight for our independence as suffragettes.
Yeah.
It made us stronger in our fight for what we wanted and not letting men take that away from us.
Yeah.
So the irony was playing the men allowed us to be stronger as women.
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
And so that's why we persevered. We didn't care. Take us to jail. We don't care now.
Yeah.
You know, we're stronger than that. Yeah.
Itself can teach you so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I just, maybe for fun, I kind of want to push back just a little bit. You were saying that when performing Shakespeare, you weren't able to comment on the sexism of the play. And I think that's definitely true. But I'm curious, especially as an extremely skilled and talented actor, do you think that there's any way to kind of insert a maybe slight commentary through your acting technique? Yes, you're not.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely. Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. There are times when you have to, because you always have to remember you were hired because people want you in that role, not just a person. And so you always have to uniquely figure out, and it's a strategy, and it works, how to bring yourself to everything you do, even if it's male. And so I remember in doing that, even though I would take those postures, I took the postures of men that I experienced in my life, in my African-American life, that influenced me. And that was my kind of way of dipping in.
I see.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I have to remember that Baptista, even though I'm a woman doing a man, I'm still a woman doing a man, an African-American man. Mm-hmm. So my love for my daughters, one being, white in the show and one being Black in the show, you can't ignore that. Yeah. So there were times that they would say, such as I said, no, but I'm a Black dad. I won't do that.
Yeah.
And they go, what? I go, wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Just I gotta go with what's favorite. Like, you know what I mean? It's who I am. I think that's how you slip it in. You know what I mean? I always tell people never, you can never forget who you are and why you're there. And that's uniquely why they've asked you to do it.
Right.
So don't push it to the side and say, I can't.
Yeah.
Just know that's part of what you have to dip in. Just know how far to dip.
Yeah. So when you say taking the postures of African American men, do you mean the physical postures in your body, or can you tell me a little more about what you mean?
Not only just the physical postures, but the way we think about our children. I don't know how white folks think about their children. I find that Black men are very protective of their daughters. They're very strong about how they feel about their daughters, and they don't, which was a slippery slope with. That would take certain lines that people are used to being funny and asides, but they weren't funny to me as the Black father.
Oh, I see.
I mean what I say, and I say what I mean.
I see. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's amazing.
There were some things that I would turn and they would say, "Oh, but that's what I said." Not so much.
No. Yeah.
Not so much. Not for me. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. Just not for me. Let me try this.
Yeah.
That's why you hired me.
Mm-hmm.
So just let me try it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I get it. I get it.
Right.
These girls are my heart. It's all, I don't care what they do. They're my heart and they're my babies.
Right. And what I'm hearing is that because you have this really robust classical training, you know the text and you know maybe the ways that certain lines have historically been delivered. So then with that, you're able to twist things, make something more serious here, add a little
right
there.
Right.
That's awesome.
And not go for what people say, well, Baptiste always does that. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not okay. Yeah. It's good, but I'm doing Baptiste right now, so that's not where I see it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because that would be false and it would be untrue, and no, it wouldn't be organic. And that's not what you want. I want to have a conversation with my daughter because I love her and it's sincere. Mm-hmm. And I want to have a conversation with her. I don't need to proclaim it to everyone. That's my daughter.
Yeah. That's awesome. A lot of Shakespearean work has kind of heavy subject matter, of course. There's deaths, there's rapes, there's family drama, etc., etc. And in performing that, we are practicing it week after week, performing it night after night. I imagine that might take a little bit of a toll on you as an actor. And I mean, even just the physical exertion that it requires to perform these plays. I'm curious, how do you maybe recognize when that starts to take a toll on you, and what are your self-care practices that have emerged through that?
Well, I did the nurse in Romeo and Juliet in an 80s kind of version of it, mm-hmm. at Shakespeare in DC. And I remember doing that. And the nurse can be like, she goes from one extreme to another. First act, she's like, and then the second act, she's like, oh, poor me. She goes, oh my goodness. And sometimes it would take a toll on me, especially when we got to the death scene. Mm-hmm. When they find Juliet, and for this nurse, Juliet was my baby, not being able to have my own, having lost a baby, the nurse. And I know that would take a toll on me every night. And so I found that what I had to do was I had to decompress by going home. For me, when I get in situations like self-care, it's dumb television that watches me and I don't watch it. Mm-hmm. And it's going and it's totally just listening to good music and just kind of nothing to do with theater. I've grandchildren. I have grandchildren. I'm such a family-oriented person that when I come home, I really, really work very, very hard at keeping all of that right outside the door.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to learn, and it's taken me years to learn it. But I very rarely bring the things from a theater home with me. Mm. I really try to leave them in the dressing room when I walk out. And I think part of that is that I don't have a tendency to carpool or I just don't, I just kind of disconnect. I have to disconnect.
Yeah.
You know, I loved what I do and I love being with everybody at the theater, but when the theater is over, I really try to leave the theater right where it is.
Yeah.
Because what I think it does for you, especially when you're doing an intense show, I mean, even doing Fanny, you know, if you don't do that, it becomes your life. And the thing that I always tell people, and I always tell young people this, and I'll say it 100 times again and again and again, let the arts be a part of what you do, not who you are.
Wow. Yeah.
It should not be who you are. It should be something that's a part of your life that you do. So that you have a life, because it is through life's experiences that you will be able to bring good things to the stage.
Yeah.
And if you're not living and just doing normal, redundant things like going to the door to get a delivery or making a smoothie for my husband, or, you know what I'm saying? Just some of the basic things that we do, taking a walk, talking to friends that have nothing to do with theater. I think that in many ways grounds you, and it kind of gives you new energy when you come back to the theater because you're ready to come back.
Yeah. And
you're not living with it all day long. So it's not like laboring you when you get back and you're like, oh, here we are again. I don't go to the theater that way. When I'm at the theater, I'm excited to be there because it's another part of the day.
Right. Yeah.
It's another part of my journey. And I've got some stuff that happened to me today that I can bring right to the theater. If it's something that irritated me, I can put it right into that performance that night and you know, shake that off. You know, if it's been all of that, I think works to and so for me, my self-care is really focusing on my family and home. And I think we all need a home, a soft place to fall that makes us feel like, you know, like I said, it's not who I am, it's what I do.
What you do. That's awesome.
What I do. Yeah.
You were Chicagoan of the Year last year in 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So amazing. And I believe the reason, or one of the many reasons I'm sure you were awarded that title, is because you were one of the first actors during the COVID-19 pandemic hopping back out and doing an outdoor show, which was so salient and present last year during the election year. You were civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer, and I'm really just curious. Okay, I have a couple questions, but my first one is where did that drive come from to hop right back out and keep going even during the pandemic?
Well, you know what? I think this is a great question. I love this question because it kind of speaks to what I just said. I think when the pandemic happened, people that were in the arts that don't live full, robust lives, what do I do now?
Yeah.
That's my point of what I just said. What do I do now? And they were lost. A lot of folks were lost. And I have friends that were lost. And I said, but what a great time to reinvent, recreate, and reach out for all those things, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I wish I could have had time. This is the time to grasp those things.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to work on a lot of different things. And Cheryl West, who wrote Fannie Lou Hamer, the story of Fannie, she and I have worked together on several projects. And she'd been telling me about this project, and she had given it to me in 2019. I read it. I loved it. And she said, well, I thought about you when I wrote it and wrote it for you. And I said, oh, that's amazing. So we did a workshop of it in November 2019 at the Goodman in their reading that they do. They do a big festival. We did it in the festival. It went over like gangbusters. So the Goodman had decided that in 2020, it was going to open the season in the Owen.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened. And if you know anything about Fannie Lou Hamer, she was a civil rights activist, a freedom, and her biggest thing was voting rights, people having the right to vote. What an amazing time for me to have that piece sitting in front of me with the election that we went through last year. And Henry Godinez, the director of the piece, and Cheryl said, we just can't sit on this. I said, guys, we got to do something. We got to do something. And so Henry came up with the idea that just like that he was going to get a bus, he was going to get a trailer. We need to get a truck and just go into the community because people need to vote. And I said, you're absolutely right. This is prime time for Fannie Lou Hamer. Yeah. How can, and we're going to be shut down because we can't get into the theater. And so we, in conjunction, the Goodman said, we'll try. So in conjunction with the Park District, the CDC, the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, and all of the unions, the theatrical unions, they said, okay, let's do it. And they came to me and they said, you're willing to do it? I said, I'm willing to stand on a truck and scream to the mountains if it will get people to vote, if it will get people to understand who Fannie Lou Hamer was. And since then, we did it in 9 parks in Chicago. We did it in Washington, D.C., just before the elections, which went over like gangbusters. Then this year, even though we were still in the pandemic, the first part of the year, people still wanted to do it because they didn't know. A lot of people don't even know who Fannie Lou Hamer was. They don't know anything. But as they find out, they're going, why don't we know this? I'm like, she was a woman. First of all, here we go back to the suffragettes. She was a woman that was fighting for the rights of people who did not know they had a right to vote. You got to remember, this is a woman that was 44 years old when she even knew she could vote in Mississippi. So she made it her life goal to make sure that everybody knew they had rights, and she fought for those that didn't have. And so because of that, now I did it in Florida this past winter, January to March, the full length production, because when we did it in the parks, it was 40 minutes. Yeah. Now it was a 90-minute show, which was the original way we did it when we did the workshop in 19. Now, I just did it at Oslo in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida. Went over like gangbusters. We're talking Florida. I couldn't imagine it was going to go over like that. They absolutely loved it. The audiences, and said the same thing. Everybody kept saying, why don't we know about her? She was a woman, a Black woman.
A Black woman, yeah.
In the 60s, and we know how that works. But you know who Martin Luther King is and everybody else. We can go down the list of the men you know. It's the women you don't know that are part of the civil rights movement. So she's finally getting her day in the sun, and she's so well-deserved. And so, again, it's going to open back up the season at the Goodman in the fall. Yeah. I'm on my way to Oregon Shakespeare Festival to do it there in about 2 weeks. Yeah. Until August. And then it's going to Seattle Rep. It's going to the Publican. I mean, it's like gangbusters. This woman is going to be honored now all over the country. And it all started with that little beacon of, I cannot just sit here and do nothing.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I would love, I have to find a way to come see it maybe after it runs. That just sounds amazing.
Yeah, so it's going to be in all of these places. And I think it's great, but I think it also proves that when in this time, we can do so much. We can recreate ourselves. We are artists who can do whatever we want to do. And in many ways, this is the kind of stuff that Shakespeare would have been proud of, that someone got on the back of a truck outside, outdoors. Isn't that what that is? The Globe? Isn't that what Shakespeare's about? Taking it to the community. I mean, it all comes back full circle. That's what it was about. It was about community, speaking to community about issues that we have. You know what I'm saying? And so it was kind of like, especially in this conversation, it's kind of like the very thing that Shakespeare's about. Taking it to the people. Yeah. Letting them make the decisions. Leaving it at their doorstep and seeing what they'll do with it. So it makes me very proud to do it every time I do it.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah. So that's why I say Shakespeare, he shows himself in so many different ways through our careers that we don't even know that's happening at times. And so as I was doing Fannie, I kept saying, people kept saying, it's like she's giving, I said, what, a soliloquy? You know what I'm saying? It's like, there she is.
Yeah.
In the honor of that. And we were outdoors, and and to know that I'm going to Oregon Shakespeare Festival with Fannie Lou Hamer. Yeah. That's when you know all of that they told me I couldn't do. Yeah. All that they said I'd never do comes full circle.